Hello and welcome to the day ahead. It is Monday, October the 13th. I'm Andrew Gagan. Well, the Australian share market has opened sharply lower this morning, initially falling around 0.5%. This follows a heavy sell-off on global markets on Friday after President Trump escalated his trade conflict with China after Beijing tightened its rare earth restrictions. President Trump saying it would impose an additional 100% tariff on imports from China, as well as export controls on critical US-made software, which sent mega-cap tech stocks tumbling. The S&P 500 and Nasdaq suffering their largest one-day fall since Liberation Day sell-off in April. And for the week, the S&P logging its biggest drop since May, while the Nasdaq's weekly decline was its steepest since April. Well, the Philadelphia Stock Exchange Semiconductor Index dropped more than 6% in the wake of that announcement. Among the mega-cap tech stocks, large falls across the board. Qualcomm falling more than 7% after China's market regulator said the country had launched an antitrust investigation into the semiconductor manufacturer over its acquisition of Israel's Autotalks. US-listed shares of Chinese companies dropped sharply, with heavyweights Alibaba and JD.com and PDD Holdings all down sharply. And shares of the copper miners fell, tracking the price of the underlying commodity on fears of a trade war between the US and China, with US-listed shares of BHP and Rio among those affected. Well, President Trump has reignited a trade war against China with promises to sharply hike tariffs in a reprisal against China curbing its critical mineral exports. The president has slapped an additional 100% tariff on imports from China from November 1st, along with new export controls on any and all critical software, he says. He's also threatened new export controls on aeroplanes and parts. However, over the weekend, President Trump sounded more conciliatory, posting that everything would be fine and the US didn't want to hurt China. Meanwhile, in Washington, the standoff between Republican and Democratic lawmakers remains, with no sign of an end to the government shutdown that began at the beginning of the month. Another issue for investors is the absence of key economic reports by government agencies, which includes the forthcoming release of inflation and retail sales data. Well, US Treasury yields fell to multi-week lows on Friday as investors moved to a safe haven following President Trump's tariff threats against China. The two-year yield sliding to 3.5%, the 10-year falling to a more than 1 month low of 4.05%. And the US dollar index fell more than 0.5%. President Trump's announcement lifting the euro and the yen against the greenback, while currencies linked to commodities, including raw materials, saw the Aussie dollar fall, trading at 65 cents, registering its largest fall since March. Oil prices tumbled on Friday in response to President Trump's move against China, which could potentially undermine global demand. Brent crude futures down almost 4%, $62 a barrel, their lowest since May. Copper fell 4.5%, iron ore little changed, and gold rallied back above $4,000 an ounce as investors sought safe haven assets. Spot gold at around $4,040 an ounce. And Bitcoin tumbled on news of President Trump's China tariffs. It staged a modest recovery to be trading at $115,000. Locally this week, tomorrow we get the Reserve Bank Board's meeting minutes, along with CBA's household spending insights and NAB's September business survey. Wednesday sees building activity data for the June quarter. Thursday we get labour force data for September, and RBA Governor Michelle Bullock speaks. Overseas, China's international trade data is released today. Tomorrow, Fed Chair Jerome Powell speaks. Wednesday, China's consumer and producer prices for September, as well as the US Consumer Price Index and the Fed Beige Book, although the US government shutdown may prevent the release of economic data. Thursday, US retail sales and producer prices, and Friday, US import and export prices and industrial production. And today, ANZ is holding its strategy day. That is your day ahead. We'll see you again tomorrow.